conference definitely exceeded my expectations. I learned a lot from all of you, and I'm very excited to introduce our final keynote speaker. So this is my friend, Bruce. Bruce and I met years ago at an AMIN conference, AMIN conference. He was presenting as a keynote, met him in the elevator, introduced myself, and he has become such an advocate and helper to our business at Samantle. We hired his organization a few years back to help us with our growth strategy, and he put a 3-year roadmap in place for us to really help us identify which service lines we should be promoting with our clients, and we have executed on all of his recommendations. So I'm really grateful that he came back. When you go to put together a conference on data, finding people that you really trust in the data strategy space is hard, and so he flew all the way here from London. He said it was a 17-hour trip, and I'm just really grateful for him to have come in. So let me quickly go through his bio so you know a little bit about him. Bruce Spiegel is the Senior Managing Partner of Winterberry Group, an industry expert on growth strategy, an advisor on multiple company boards, and a valued member of the International Advertising Association, he also spearheaded the Rising Marketing Leaders Initiative. A seasoned executive with over 3 decades of experience, Bruce has led hundreds of engagements focused on growth strategy, commercial diligence, and mergers and acquisitions for companies in the advertising and marketing services, data, technology, media, and commerce sectors. He has also worked extensively with private equity firms, investing across these sectors. As an entrepreneur, Bruce has hands-on experience building companies from the ground up. Before establishing Winterberry Group's strategic consulting practice, he founded and sold 2 companies, one in marketing technology and another in data. He has served in numerous roles, including board member, president, CFO, head of sales, marketing, and service. And in 23 and 24, Winterberry Group received Best Place to Work awards and a spot on the Inc. 5000 Fastest Growing Companies list. I could go on and tell you more about his accomplishments, but he is better at explaining what he does than I do, and so I'll pass it on now.
Thank you, Lisa. So what happened was I did 2 startups and I hired lots of consultants, so I thought I was pretty smart. Except they didn't know what to do. So you should have it back. How's it? That's better. So, started consultancy alongside an investment bank, which is kind of a strange thing to do. I was very technical, but I felt that there was a lot of room in this market. Over the last 21 years, we've done about 800 assignments. Half of our work is helping agencies, data companies, public, private, pretty much anything that works on the supply side of the industry. We also, along the way, did data and identity strategy for Citi and Capital One, Peoria, folks like that. So we'll sit down and figure out their strategy, write the RFP, and annoy all of the agencies and service providers. 25 people covering North America, covering Europe, and occasionally wandering into Asia as well. In between working for the suppliers of the industry, we work for the private equity investors. And we're at a point where we probably work for 80 private equity firms, KKR, Carlyle, all the big names, but a lot of them mid-market transactions. And you get a lot of questions where you're, okay, what does this mean? And data and the technologies around it is this kind of black box. So we started writing white papers, and in the last couple of years, we've sized the data market, we've defined the data market, we've written on demystifying the data layer, data collaboration, we work with Oracle, Adobe, etc. But what we try to do is take some of the buzz out and bring it down to the practical layer, which is why Lucy said, come do this. We've also, I think, built 10 data analytics practices for agencies, both on this side and on the other. So we try to make it as good as we can. So kind of winding back, all right, a step forward. I'm going to talk about, like, the very first thing when you do data strategy, think about the use cases. What is it going to be used for? And so I'll talk a little bit about how is the market changing that is driving this transformation of the data layer. Where do we see the challenges? And what do we think is going to happen over the next few years? The data, between data services, and data infrastructure, about $29 billion a year is spent in the US. Last year it grew. This year, I think it's going to probably go 10%. Come on. All right. so a couple of things that started to drive this transformation. One, the migration from traditional channels to digital by the consumer. Just think, linear TV uses very little data. CTV always uses data. Traditional experiential channels, very little data. Go to search, display, lots of data. As more and more data was being collected, more regulation. We heard a really good session on the regulatory environment, but if you are a data company, and I sit on 3 data company boards, every day you are looking at you having a full-time privacy and compliance officer just to make sure bad things don't happen. But you're constantly looking at a moving target. And then probably in the last few years, machine learning has been around for a really long time. It is not new, but it was the first AI. And now we have Gen AI, which is used for different things. But that complexity coming together, plus the regulatory, which is driving a shift towards collecting more and more first-party data that you have rights to, is transforming the industry. What it really meant, when I got in and started Peoria, it was about email. And about 2007, we had social. Then we had mobile. And each channel we added drove more data. Then, probably around 2012, it was programmatic display. Early years. I did a 4-page presentation about data-driven display in 2010. Had 150 people who had no idea what I was talking about. They didn't believe it. They didn't see it happen. So we went through this transformation over the last 5 years, which was all about cookies and all about IP addresses. And as we've watched the shift from linear to CTV, we've also seen the cookies deprecate. They're not going away, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% of them are gone away. So they will linger around, but the solutions have moved past them. IP address, which is used for targeting on CTV, much more important. There's some challenges with getting rid of the IP address, because the IP address is also used for fraud. So if they say no more IP addresses, how do they validate who you are and where you are for the fraud and risk side? So we're a little bit protected from that just disappearing right now. But nonetheless, the spend went from 85 billion to 310 billion of data-driven media. And so 310, we track 550 billion of spend in this industry. That's called going from about 20% to going from about 60%. All right, when you think about the channels, don't just think digital. It's email first, because that is probably the most straightforward and most closed loop. It's paid social second. We worked with Meta when they were doing their data strategy and helped them identify all the right data players so they could build all their own segments, which they promptly did, and then kicked out all the third-party data providers in true Meta fashion. But paid social has been a big driver of how do I take audiences and map them into an environment full of data. Direct mail, still the 3rd most popular channel. Like everybody's like, what happened to direct mail? Direct mail is still about a $38 billion channel. With 70 billion views, 75 billion views a year now. It's a lot. And every one of those is data-driven. Display video, connected TV. Every dollar of linear TV that moves over to CTV is roughly 15 cents worth of data. That is a lot. When we're moving 5 billion from the linear column to 5 billion to the CTV column, that is driving the data. The interesting thing, we did a study, we talked to the trade desk, we talked to the library, we talked to people who are selling public audiences. 60% of all CTV data is demos, women aged 57 to 55. And the question was why? Because planning is still done by linear planners. And that's how they grew up, and that's how they do things. So they tell the buyers, oh, just get me women, 57 to 55, etc. Bigger difference is it's far more accurate than everything else. But we have haven't seen. We think probably in the next 36 months, more money will be spent on CTV than will be spent on linear TV. It's like we are at that switching point when the sports mode that protected linear broke in the last 12 months. That transformation kicked into high gear. All right, and of course, more channels, more data-driven media, more focus on attribution, insights, measurement. A lot of people do a good job on the measurement, reporting, descriptive analytics. Attribution, everybody wants it. It's really hard. It's really not getting done. And it's been the year of attribution probably for at least 4 years. We don't really believe that we'll ever get there. MTA, multi-touch attribution, was really cookie dependent. That's coming away. We're seeing media mix modeling rise up. MMM is very machine learning dependent, very driven. But even there, that's really hard to do it well. You can put all the machines you want against it, but if you don't have a person to ask the questions, it doesn't really work. As we started looking and went a level deeper, we said, all right, there's audience data and then there's unstructured data. All of that created content. So what's going to happen over there? So we started to dig in. And what we found is that first in the production use cases, we saw machine learning. Now in the creative use cases, you're seeing generative AI. And so now you have to say, how do I take these two things and turn it into creative intelligence? Yet another term the industry uses that's not particularly well defined. We kind of break it up a little bit. So, all right, Gen AI, concepting, ideation, it's not a big idea, but it helps. Creative development, content creation, copyright. Machine learning, creative intelligence, which is that real-time optimization in paid social right now, because there's like a fire hose of data coming back. Measurement and attribution, channel selection, personalization, optimization. In the middle, where you're starting to see these two come together, versioning and iterations within campaigns. But getting all of that data pulled together, and also all the reformatting, resizing. We did a big study, there's a white paper on creative intelligence, creative optimization, and AI in the production process. What we saw is the idea is the idea. You could take creative brief from 2 weeks down to 2 hours. And then you can take, once the core assets are built, versioning, distribution, optimization, all the way down to measurement and tracking, is that combination of both Gen AI and machine learning. So it's not one piece of tech or the other. And we're really seeing adoption accelerate. Everybody's in test, which you heard from the clients yesterday. Oh yeah, we're going to let the agencies test it. That is still across the board. It's okay, agency, either test on a public LLM, or more to the point, we'd like you to test on a private large language model. But test and tell us what we should do. It's very much like when mobile was transforming 15 years ago, and the agencies could never get paid for doing anything mobile. But everybody was like sucking up all your time with questions. We're kind of in that period. We think next year it kicks into more practical applications. And you can start making more money with it. Right now it's a little bit about how to find out how to save money and how to make money. And then the final demand driver. All of this regulation, privacy, all of that first-party data, second and third, is leading to the rise of collaboration solutions. So we did a white paper with this, building on this back in June. By the way, all the white papers up on our website, free to download, lots to read if you have time for 100 pages of stuff. But data collaboration, if I want to maintain privacy, if I don't want my data moved, if I want to encrypt it, so that I'm protected, because the worst thing that can happen, it costs you a lot of money, but it's brands sharing with brands. It's brands within organizations sharing with each other. It's brands and their media partners. It's brands and the third-party data providers. And the and the other types of commerce and media networks. So all of this collaboration is occurring, and there are a lot of technology solutions. But it is going to increasingly be a part of that audience layer, and also to protect your creativity. So we've seen a lot of transformation there. The market's starting to sell out. Okay, so I talked about a lot of the why. Why is all this happening? And threw out a lot of the terms. Now I'm going to start to mess with you because this is what it all rests on. So when we look at the market and we say, all right, there's a data layer and it has all its components. There's an intelligence layer and there's an activation layer. So I can take all this technology and break it down into 3 really simple layers. It comes back and says, oh, I need an analytics data environment, I need a CRM, I need an identity graph, I need a data warehouse, data lake, master data management, LLM data warehouse. Oh yeah, it's really straightforward. The reality is that everybody's using multiple components. There is no one stack that has been built. Engagement marketing platforms, if you're on the B2B side, that's probably one of the most popular because it's easy. And it goes all the way down into SMB. As you go and move up from small, medium, up into the mid-market and up into enterprise, this complexity increases significantly. And then it looks like this. So it's probably pretty hard to read from here. The brown. In that brown, that is our data layer. This is the foundation. We're going to have a data warehouse. It is likely to either be Snowflake or Databricks. I'm going to most likely have CDP. CDPs, when they came out 5-6 years ago, everybody said, it's a customer data platform, all my data is going in. Couldn't handle all the data. So what they did was they took the data, they put it into the data warehouse, and they cleaned it, and they normalized it there. And they said to the CDP, well, what are you going to be? Well, CDP is filling a role as an optimization, a real-time platform, and it kind of lives between this data world and decisioning and orchestration. So it lives between this data layer and the intelligence layer, where all your machine learning, all your modeling, all of that lives. So CDP is kind of prepped through the data layer into this hybrid role. But then you also need identity, because identity is how you match all those various data elements together so that you can then prepare them for activation. And you can interrogate them for insights. And you can use them in your models. Because otherwise you have a lot of disparate data. So what you want to do is say, all right, let me match Bruce to Bruce's address, Bruce's email, to Bruce's IP address. And that is an identity graph. And that is yet another graph technology. And the identity graph sits separate from the data warehouse, and it sits separate from the CDP, but it can push in. And it can be your matching solution, or it could come from a third party. There are 90 different identity providers who have different schemes based on, oh, is this for real-time bidding, or is this for CRM? Oh, we've been matching for a really long time, but it's gotten more and more sophisticated. Oh, by the way, there's identity solutions that are vertical specific. I sit on the board of an identity solution company that only does healthcare, because healthcare has longitudinal data. Like all the data concepts are different. So we built a company to go solve for that problem. And our market's growing at 30% a year. So anyway, you have to kind of look at this in pieces. Get to the intelligence layer. And that is where all your modeling, your models live, your machine learning lives, your Gen AI, large language models, all of that is in the company. And then next to that is all the activation layers. And what happened when this market evolved is everybody who built an ESP or a DSP is we're going to do all the intelligence inside. And it's going to be the thing that controls them all. That one brain. Guess what? You try walking with 8 brains. If every brain is the decision maker, omnichannel personalization fails. So what we started to see was the brains, the intelligence coming out of those platforms into this separate layer where you could consolidate. And of course, if you're Salesforce, you call it Einstein. If you're Adobe and Sensei, they all came up with cute names to try to become the brain that controls it. Because the dumber the red gets, the less expensive it's going to get. Because it ends up just moving creative assets and data assets around. And then you kind of move it all the way back. But the whole story here is, if the brown is not correct and is not stitched together, and they will sell you the dream. Salesforce has their data cloud. It does everything. As long as you have at least 10 system integrators, you can work and build all the services. Adobe, they have real-time CDP. It does everything. We wrote a paper on data collaboration with Adobe. They didn't actually have the product yet. They haven't announced the product to freeze the market. We're like, I get prices. No. So, figuring out how to make all this work, and at the enterprise level, I think Adobe and Salesforce have 87% penetration. But neither one of their data layers actually does all the things it's supposed to do. So you need this composable layer to support it. So you have to have data lake, data warehouse layer, CDP, and then some level of collaborative data platform. The data lake providers, some of them are buying ECPs. So Smooth went to Snowflake. Databricks is still kind of figuring out what they're going to do. Vibrant bought Abu, so they can have their cloud-based solution. AWS has one. Google has one. It adds Data Hub. Oh, Amazon has two. Microsoft built four. We asked Mike, we were working with them, we're like, why would you build four? Well, LinkedIn had to have theirs. Microsoft Advertising had to have theirs. Microsoft Dynamics had to have theirs. Like, why don't we just have one? Doesn't work that way. So, and then get to kind of this interesting place. Needed LLMs. LLMs, and I know Mr. Steam did a presentation on DAM, but my DAM, my CMS, my PAM, all of my unstructured data, you want to point that large language model there. Except what everybody really wants to do is they also want to point it at the audience side. So that you actually have the intelligence about the people with the intelligence about the content. You want to pull that all together. This is not easy because Gen AI doesn't actually work with numbers particularly well. So there's a little bit of, this is a little bit of holy grail. When you think about identity, you think about the identity piece runs into all of these others. And it's first party, it's third party. Best bet, don't build matching algorithms. Don't license for somebody. There are plenty of companies that license, but test for accuracy. Accuracy being the most important thing. The data collaboration world, it's kind of interesting because people are like, well, I want one. If you're a brand, you should support one or two. If you're a media company, we're working with WC, and they've got a data clean room from LiveRamp. They have InfoSum, which is a cryptographic clean room. They have Snowflake and Pablo. Because if a brand comes and the brand says, I'm using this clean room, and you're the media owner, and the use case is right now, it's overlap. Do my audience is overlap, and it's attribution measurement. But if they're using whatever the brand's using, the media company is going to want to use it. So you have multiple clean rooms in multiple types. So you could have a standalone clean room. You could have a clean room with identity embedded in, like a LiveRamp model. You could have data warehouse, data lake with a clean room built in. You could have a CDP with a clean room, or you could have a walled garden with its own clean room. The reality is, we think clean rooms are becoming a feature. They are not one. There's still a container, which is the other part, data lake, data warehouse, CDP, whatever, and they will have a clean room feature to keep that data private. But it may not always be within the walls of your client's organization or your organization. It may be outside the walls. So so that you have privacy controls on either side. It's all about rights and permissions. Technology is not actually that specific. As all the use cases, we track some 200 data-driven use cases in B2B, customer acquisition, retention, servicing, insights, planning. Each one of those is someone says, I need to personalize better on my website. All those I needs, somewhere in there is a map that you prioritize and say, here's what I need to have. But what we are seeing is if my data layer doesn't work, I can't activate. I can't develop the insights. And the spend is growing significantly. What you see in the mid-market is I'm going to get a marketing cloud to try to do it all. It's simpler, it costs me less to own it. It's probably not best in class, but it's in the good enough. And then when you get up and start working with big banks, work with the big retailers, etc., they want composable, they want best in class. So you run in, depending on what level your client, you may say, here's, for this type of client, this is the platform. It's fit for their size and their use cases. But more and more money is pouring in. What we are also seeing now is a balancing of functionality and cost. Part of the challenge with all the data warehouses, we want to run an analytics query in the data warehouse. If you are not careful, your compute costs are going to go through the roof. Snowflake just told you this is going to cost you $300,000. It just costs you $3 million because your analytics people are querying. Every query runs through all of the data in the cloud. We're starting to see hybrid models on-prem, like everybody said, oh, on-prem is dead. Everything is going to be in the cloud. It's actually thinking about what should be on-prem in your data cloud and what should be off. And how do you balance that so that the costs aren't crazy? We looked at building private LLMs 18 months ago, about $15 million a year maintaining. That has come down to $2 million. So you're starting already to see a rapid decline in that cost. But again, if you're not managing it right, it's going to bounce around. And some CFOs can go, well, where did those costs come from? And some CTOs can say, well, we can't. You just like as a marketer, the worst thing you want is talking to CTOs, well, we can't do it. Or it's going to be 6 to 9 months because you don't want to deal with it. But we're now starting to see a better opportunity as we head into 2025 to do optimization. So there's some challenges. I mean, other than all the complexity I just threw at you, there are some things that we think about. Data accuracy and integration complexity. Do you have the right people? Do you have the right data governance? I was speaking to somebody yesterday, and what I learned I was doing data architecture for Timeline a couple of years ago. What I was taught was go and have the conversation with the privacy people at the beginning of the project. They will give you what's acceptable and what's not. If you wait till the end of the project and walk through the door and say, look, this is what we can do. They're like, no. We didn't do all this. We felt left out. And we're now going to just say no until we can catch up. But if you bring them along from the beginning, if you bring IT along from the beginning, marketing tends to succeed in getting what they want. We're designing to a place that's going to be acceptable. The organization and talent, there are a lot of silos. Think about the creative world and think about the data world. Those people don't really talk. If you can get them in the same room when you're doing strategy, that was victory. Now think about all those creative assets managed by the creative people or the creative tech, and all the audience assets run by IT, marketing, tech, etc. Not the same. So now you've got to get everybody to talk together. What we have learned is you map your use cases, get your priorities set first. That way you're going to them and saying, let's crawl what world. But crawl with things that will give you quick wins. No matter what we think about, security, privacy, compliance, all of that, very, very important. At the end of the day, it comes down to accuracy and quality. Give me really accurate women 57 and 59 with an accurate demo attached. I will buy that over almost every other attribute. Why? Because the accuracy, I know it's real. And that was the whole thing about linear. It was never accurate. That was a real spraying thread. So starting with the basics, as we see the planning part shift, there is still going to be accuracy first, and then tell me what else you know. So you have transaction data, you have behavioral data, you layer it on, but again, built on bad, inaccurate data, and it can be accurate, it can be correct, but it can't be precise. Like, there's lots of nuance in that. So we focus, yes, you need security, privacy, all that, but if it's not accurate, none of the rest matters. Regulatory, I heard this yesterday, it's a moving target. There was another state, like somebody said, the laws in Vermont are so tough, just don't market to Vermont. That's okay, they don't have any people. Anybody from Vermont, right? They can do that. But you can't not market to California. In California, fortunately, Newsom just knocked out a bill this week that would have made marketing in California everything knocked in, which would pretty much crash data-driven marketing for that state. B2B marketing, some states have regulations, others have none. So all the privacy stuff in Indiana, all B2C, B2B, full waiver, doesn't matter at all. So understand what states you're going to be marketing to, whether it's national, whether it's global. When I was over in London last week, every conversation was about GDPR and what's the next interpretation. The ability of the regulators in Europe to make their own decision and go really expansive, and then go, yeah, here's a $2 billion fine for you, a $4 billion fine for you. So they are fining like crazy, which is raising money. They probably raised $20 billion worth of fines. That's a pretty good hold on here. One of the last questions is who owns it? So who's responsible for this in your organization? Well, marketing operations, marketing technology, say they're out there own this. Customer experience people said, well, they own this. Marketing in general said they own it. IT said they own it. Analytics said no, I own it. But everybody can't own this. Everybody, it's who's accountable. Part of the problem is there isn't one owner. It's a steering committee that owns this, and you have to navigate that steering committee, which is why Quick Wins makes a whole lot of sense. All right. So what do we think is going to happen? Audience and media fragmentation continues. Increased demand for omnichannel personalization, more privacy, but we are going to see this integration of AI between machine learning and generative AI. These are things we know this is going to happen, we know it's not going to get simple. What we think we know. We think this stays hybrid. We do not think that best in class is the only way, or marketing clouds is going to be. We think it's going to be a hybrid stack. Even in the mid-market, there's no one vendor that's going to get it. And they'll do good things, but you just have to think about what are the services in between, which creates an incredible opportunity. The data services industry in the US is close to $10 billion. Out of that, $29 billion. So there's a lot of services money that goes there. You've got to get your clients to trust you. What's inevitable? The silos are going to get collapsed. We do believe it, maybe in my lifetime. So it's going to be a lot of work. We think this is probably the biggest gate. It's going to take a couple of years for it to really come together, just because organizations are built that way. But if you brought together on the agency side, you can be there and say, hey, we can do this for you. Because it's easier for us to rearrange the deck chairs than for the brands. Ultimately, all of this says more and more money pouring into data infrastructure. Cloud costs, infrastructure costs, Yes, the costs are coming down, but the use cases are increasing. So we are seeing this steady increase year over year, not just in what you spend on data, but what you spend on the infrastructure and therefore what you spend on those services. And those services investments are going up. Well, we did a market analytics survey, and what we asked was, are you doing this yourself? And the answer was pretty much across North America and Europe is they are using partners. Like no organization has enough talent, has enough skills to navigate this transformation. But it's a partnership. And it's finding, I was talking to one of the very, very large labs last week, and they said, our problem is our people sell to IT and they don't know marketing. Could you come in and help us teach our IT sellers marketing so they can talk to their IT clients who can talk to marketing? It's like, this is a journey, but it's a journey that people are taking and they need partners to help them be that bridge. Just like if you work in retail, how do you bridge merchandising and marketing, out of Walmart? They actually need their partners, their agencies, to help do this work. So, look at it holistically. Like when you're starting to go into big picture, think about what is the talent you need. Data layer talent, intelligence layer talent, activation. Activation is the talent you can train up the quickest. Intelligence is the scarcest resource. I think there are 270,000 positions, data analysts on LinkedIn. Partner. Pick your partners. This is really important. You want a partner that is more open, not that is not closed. If they've sold you the dream that it can do everything, run away. It's like none of it's going to do everything. And as you push this through, whether it's in your organization or out of the brand, quick wins. Sell value through quick wins. I can get you those. Build enough quick wins, you get the credibility. And maybe it comes from the creative side, maybe it's going to come from the audience side. But you get, ultimately you want to be able to be handed data to work with because it becomes really sticky. So, Demystifying the data layer, white paper up there, data collaboration, white paper, creative and AI, white paper, marketing analytics, it's all on the website. Anyway, thank you. That was fun. That wasn't bad, it wasn't too far off. Questions? I know it's like a lot.
You got offices in Canada?
We do a lot of work with that.
Montreal?
We still a lot of work for Transcom.
Sorry?
We still a lot of work for Transcom, for TC. So our company is 25 people. We fly around a lot. It's about 3 weeks a month. I also used to sit on board of a Canadian wealth from Bond. They were sold to private equity. So we go back and forth. Canada looks like, if we were to draw a line, it's not the 51st state when it comes to privacy. It looks as a direct parallel to Austria and a GDPR country. So you have to think, everybody goes, oh yeah, it's just Canada, it's not so. Yes.
On your Venn diagram where you said versioning and iterations and reforming and adding recycling, we had a technology partner approach us and kind of try to sell us the moon on how, their platform was going to solve for all of that. Can you explain whether the middle of that diagram will be technology providers that are offering that, or is that some sort of baked-in solution or AI and machine learning come together on top of your current platforms?
These are the things that, like Salesforce calls it Einstein. These are the personalization technologies. The CDPs have built their own version. Sometimes they get the cute names, sometimes they do not. But where I think this goes is right now all of your MarTech applications, they're bringing those channels, SMS, push, email, direct. They're bringing those together into one decisioning and orchestration framework. And then you have the paid media, the digital media. And that's DSP with its own brand. We're starting, like just in the last 6 months, we're starting to see the CDPs cross over. Even Adobe starting to cross over, and we're starting to bridge this ad tech and MarTech. It's not there yet, and you're going to have a couple of brands for a while. And somebody comes in and sells you a dream, and you look at the car and it's beautiful, and then you look at it, there's no wheels. It's like, okay, but there will be wheels one day. We're just not there yet.
That validates kind of what our dam manager said. She said that the system's going to be able to do all this stuff in no time. I think for us it's going to be processing that and operationalizing it through the company and trying to price it.
So again, it's looking at, if you look at it from the data layer up, and then think through what are all the components that we need, what should we manage, what do we need a partner to manage for us, and where do we get the most value fastest? You know, there is the perfect dream. I remember writing a 3-year roadmap on how to stand all this up for one of the major banks. And they go, that's a beautiful 5-year roadmap. But they didn't even want it. But they just said they just added 2 years because that's how slow it goes.
So I think all these sound really amazing. And one thing that we usually run into is as an agency, we do have a lot of smaller clients that are not using things like CDPs and this, larger tech that I believe should be owned on their side. Is there some sort of advice that you would give to us as agencies to help, make that more readily available, lower cost solutions? Do you have any advice for us to get them started?
I would pick 3 solutions. I have small, medium, large. I would probably be looking for a mid-market solution that's going to cost, sub $200,000 a year. I start with engagement marketing. We used to call it ESP, it's now engagement marketing. So push campaigns, SMS, and email. Get that working first, because that frankly can be as inexpensive as constant contact. I would think about, for those that are slightly higher, kind of think $1 million to $25 million of revenue. Think about a HubSpot type of solution for them, because the website's baked in, the email's baked in, there's enough features and capabilities stuffed into the platform. So start at what they call CRM layer and engagement marketing. And leave and then you have a bunch of options for paid media. In digital paid, you can do it yourself, get a trade desk license, get a basis. There are a number of providers, and look for one that does a hybrid. So you can do the simple, you can use them for managed service for the complex. And right now, you can look and say, all right, do I want just display, video, etc., or do I want one that's specific for CTV? Because for local CTV, that's the thing that we think kicks next year. So that was a lot.
Thank you so much.
What challenges have you run into using IP address as an identifier? Typically, IP addresses are magnetically assigned, so you lose power for construction, school, whatever. You wind up with a new IP address. So, what issues have you run into there, and what do you do to work around that?
The first thing is IPv4. We ran out of those, so we have IPv6. So that's a new version of IP address. And the only one who really knows the telephone providers actually have the records. But that IP address in some devices, like with Amazon, they mask the last 4 digits, turn them all into zeros. So there's IP address masking. They can't get rid of them. Inside the Patriot Act, it says we have to keep IP addresses. And there has to be a record. So it's what we would be allowed to use. We think IP address is probably more sustainable. The other thing that you recommend, Get a tag manager that goes down to what they call the CDN layer, because you're going to get a more persistent tag. And if you couple that with the IP address, you'll do a better job of recognition.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much. Thank you